All right, folks, this segment of our show brought to you by Games and Things. Football season is almost here. Don't spend another fall complaining about your old chair. Choose from a wide selection of top-of-the-line home theater seats from Games and Things. I did that a couple of years ago. Love mine. Love them. They've got all kinds of options, all kinds of cool bells and whistles, or you can just get the standard, which is what I got. I'm not in need of all the fancy stuff, but they've got some cool fancy stuff if you are that guy. Games and Things, home theater seating. Get down there before the fall kicks off. All right, everyone has a plan for realignment, and so do I. My goal was to try and be as fair about this as possible. When I've looked at people's plans, it just so happens that the guy who did it for the Missouri rival site, wow, the new setup looks pretty good for Missouri. And then somebody sent me a thing, a bunch of friends sent me stuff for what Tennessee would do. And it's like, wow, Tennessee's permanent rivals are Vandy, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and you know, Alabama's got LSU, Florida, Georgia. It's like you bend it. So I tried hard not to do that. Let me show you what we did, okay? The goals were to, 1, preserve the most and the oldest rivalries in the SEC. There are rivalries out there that you don't care about. Well, you're not a Vandy fan or an Ole Miss fan. Those rivalries count as much as yours. That's one of the oldest played games in the league. So I try to keep as many as possible. Also, create rivals for the last 6 teams in. Arkansas and South Carolina still don't have tons of rivals. Yep. You know, so you got to, and then you got Oklahoma and Texas. So try and create that. Play league mates more often. We don't see schools 6, 7, 8 years. That's ridiculous. And then stick with an 8-game SEC schedule. I hate that, but it's pretty clear. Even Greg Sankey hinted at it this week that the SEC is too cowardly to go to 9 games. So that's the goal. The plan is as follows: no divisions or pods. Dump that crap. 2 SEC title game teams. They're just the highest ranked teams at season end. Very simple. Take the 2 highest ranked teams. That's your championship game. 4 permanent rivals per school, based on who you've played in the past, based on trying to create new rivals with the new teams. Very simple, and that leaves you 4 other conference foes to rotate every year. Now, to do this, I went a little crazy. You can see the research. I looked up how many times, and I don't expect you to be able to read that. I'm just showing you how hard I worked. To do this, I looked up how many times each of the 16 potential SEC teams have played one another. There's only 2 there are only 3 teams that haven't played. Oklahoma hasn't played South Carolina. Oklahoma hasn't played Mississippi State. Everybody else has played at least once. But I ranked them, you know, so who's played the most? Let's try and save those rivalries. I also, for this research, there you go. You're not going to read that either, but what that is 50 football seasons for all 16 of these teams where I tallied up all their wins. Because one of the things you run into if you're doing permanent foes, whoever picks it always picks the easiest foes for their school. Well, the way I'm doing it is we're going to show you the 8 winningest programs over the last 50 years and the 8 losingest, and each team gets 2 permanent foes from the top half and 2 permanent foes from the bottom half, and no one can sit there and cry that, well, Alabama's got it easier than we did. All right, so let's take a look. Over the last 50 years, Pool 1, and I just picked 50. It's not modern, but it's also not ancient history to the 30s. It's just a random deal. Tennessee at the bottom of Pool 1. You see the total wins over 50 years. Alabama, Oklahoma, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Auburn. LSU has passed Tennessee over the last 15 years. Texas A&M is right behind Tennessee. Basically, if I asked you to rank the 8 best programs and the 8 worst, it would be this list, except Texas A&M would be on the left. And if they did this with 50 seasons in a year or 2 when these teams come in, Texas A&M is probably going to be ahead of Tennessee. So when I did my pools for making permanent rivals, I flipped them. I put Tennessee in Pool 2, put Texas A&M in Pool 1, and that way you get your permanent foes. And let's show you your permanent foes. I don't expect you can look for your school there, but for Tennessee, the way it worked, everybody trying to keep good things, Alabama, Kentucky, Vandy, who you already play every year, and Auburn. I would have liked to have seen Georgia stick in there, but Georgia has to have Florida and South Carolina. So you play around with it, and obviously this is one man with an Excel sheet in 6 hours. The SEC has 14 schools now with computer labs. They could do this more easily. But let's say if you're Tennessee, you gain Auburn. Yeah, you lose Florida. That's exactly what you did 30 years ago. You lost Auburn and gained Florida. And so I think that would be possible. You see, everybody pretty much keeps a huge chunk of their own permanent foes in there. Most of these games are games that are already played inside the SEC, with the exception of the ones Oklahoma and Texas coming in. I just think this works. You keep those 4 every year, and then you rotate the others. When we come back, though, I'll show you what it would look like for Tennessee. We'll show you how often teams would play. We'll show you what the schedule would look like, because I even locked it in. We'll show you. It's simple, baby. It's beautiful. At Texas and Oklahoma, and you kept those 4 permanent opponents and rotate everybody else. That's next. Come on back on the Sports Source.